All right, what's going on? This is our second edition of Alt Auction Recap. We will be covering the auction that ended on June 5th here. A couple big sales, not as big as the last auction, obviously, but still some big stuff. And we'll cover some Pokemon, some NBA Finals, some big NFL sales, Kobe, LeBron, some dooms, some booms, and some trade news. So we'll start here with the big three sales of this auction. Starting with the biggest sale, 51,000, just over with the Luka True NT. Obviously, NBA season is over for him. We still have the finals going on. Game two happening tonight. But obviously Luka's season is over. And if we scroll down and look at some of the sales, it's still rising for him. His market is still strong. 8.5s don't sell too often, but definitely up from prior years. So that's definitely a strong sign for Luka.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say people are pretty optimistic in LA with the Lakers that they'll definitely make a move to improve that team. I was also looking at some of the BGS and PSA sales. That BGS 9, I think a 9 sold pretty close to the
Yeah,
the value
February.
in which that 8.5 sold for. So definitely a pretty strong sale for the grade it received. And I think a lot of people are, like I said, pretty optimistic about the Lakers moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's jump into an interesting Pokemon card, one you don't see too often. Did a little research on this, and it looks like all the participants of this year, which happens to be 2009, the Japanese tournament, got a card, and this happened to be the national champion card. And it got graded, got a PSA 10, which is also a Pop 10. So there was a couple different championships across the world in 2009. So I don't know the exact number of copies, but obviously we can see that only 13 are graded. So pretty hard card to come by, and these always fetch a pretty penny. But interestingly enough, it sold for $250 less than it did in 2023. So not a great sale if you're comparing it to some of the recents or the only other recent, but definitely a cool card. And this was the second most expensive auction. And then with the third, a guy who's kind of blowing up the baseball world. Just called up to AAA, I believe, about a week ago, and last night hit a grand slam, and I believe it was 500 feet. So this kid's, already a stud, and he's going to be in the majors soon enough, and in a big market with Boston. And this is his biggest card, one of his biggest cards. So $39,000, super super strong sale. You can see, back when the set came out in 23, some early sales at 5,700, and just been rising since then, and big jumps at that. So selling recently at Alt. February of this year, even to get another, $14,000 in 3 months is a pretty big jump for this. So, yeah, you got anything to add for Roman Anthony?
No, I think not just Roman Anthony on his own, but just like prospecting baseball in general just really goes to show how, boomer bust this really can be. You can see, like you were saying, someone in theory could have bought this exact card for $5,000, held it for this time exactly. It worked out in his favor, and he, maximized the sale to date. You never know what this card could go for when he starts, making noise in the MLB, but
Right.
it is cool to see some of these prospects really
Yeah, you
pop
can even
off.
see with the 90-day chart, just 25% in that short time is insane. And yeah, if you know what you're looking at for baseball, and you track that top 100, top 200 list, and kind of see who's floating around that single A, double A, and making moves up to triple A and eventually MLB, it's very very lucrative if you can do it correctly. So this is a testament to that. 39,000 is the third highest sale of this auction. Now we'll jump into some, big Pokemon sales. So there was, quite a bit of high dollar Pokemon stuff from this auction, and Pokemon has just been ballistic lately, up 15% almost the last 90 days. I mean, that is just a, straight trend up chart. So it's really, really cool to see. Alt does really well with Pokemon cards, and we've seen that from recent auctions as well. So this is a black label, the Poncho Pikachu, and we can see it's coming in over $22,000, and that busts some of these recent sales. And it's not an all-time high, but it's definitely up there, and it's definitely trending up from the recent sales in 2024 and early this year. And we have some more, what are these, tournament, right? Tournament cards. So There was 3 from this year that sold in this auction. We had a number 1 trainer, which is obviously the guy that took first place, number 2 trainer in this auction, and number 3 trainer. So the number 1 trainer selling at 17,000, and this is a just authentic. So no grade on this one. So it's really just slabbed for protection and authenticity purposes. Coming in at 17,000 for the number 1 trainer. And here we have the number 2 trainer, authentic again, coming in at 10,000, and the number 3 trainer coming in at 8,500. And I'm guessing these all came from the same seller. These were given out obviously in the 2002 Battle Series across Japan. So there was, I think, 8 or 9 different locations, and then 2 sessions that year, spring and fall. So you had to place in the top 3 to get a card, and yeah, you can see just taking third, you'll get a pretty penny if you held it this long. And the last one to cover here for Pokemon is a 2010 black and white Japanese Zekrom. So this is from the White Collection 15th anniversary, and it has popped off. We can see some of the recent sales: 3,500, 3,360, 3,700, and then almost doubling that at over $6,000 now. And that looks to be an all-time high for this card. So just another point to show that some of these earlier sets from the mid 2010s or even pre 2010 are really starting to gain some traction and catch up to some of this ultra modern stuff that has been just flying high.
Awesome. And then we definitely talked a little bit about SGA last week. Definitely check that episode out if you're looking for more. But, obviously MVP season in the NBA Finals, generational scorer. What's interesting about this card, though, is that it is a pop one. So you can see a handful of transactions occurred here. You can see someone actually took a loss after purchasing it for the first time ever, lost $500. And then the person that picked that up, made 15 grand. So definitely a great buy on their end. But SGA has just continued to show that he is the best player in the league. Even through the finals, the way he's able to get to the basket and just score at will is insane. I know they didn't have the buyer didn't have the benefit of seeing the game that occurred tonight, but just continues to put up 30 plus every night. And then just like Roman, SGA is up 25% last 3 months. So, the hobby is definitely taking note with his performances here as of late in the season.
Yeah, it took him a few years to figure it out, but I mean that's why you see some of these crazy low sales from a couple years ago. It wasn't looking great for OKC its first couple years when they had 15 to 20 wins in his first couple seasons. So the guys that were buying low really are getting the payoff now.
Yeah, and just another rare card here, obviously pop 3 in this case. If you don't mind just jumping down to the view all on the
Yep.
all-time sales, it is pretty interesting to see, again, talking about that prospecting, the people who, were thugging it out through some of those brutal OKC teams when they were, looking to lose basketball games, picking this card up at $200, $400,000, and now it's transacting at over 15,000, almost 17,000 in this case. Just continuing to see strong SGA sales across the auctions, which I'm sure will continue throughout the summer into early next season as he just cements himself as a top 5 player here in the league.
Yep, and I think we have one more SGA to look at. So it looks
Yeah,
like it looks like this is not as true flawless, right? This is to 25, so a little more rare than that, and yeah, coming in at 13,000, another all-time high for him. So even from what is that, a week or two before, jumping up another $5,000. So kind of crazy there to see that jump.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, not necessarily a true flawless, not a rookie card either. So very strong sale. Obviously, flawless is a set people are always chasing, but very, very strong sale for a non-rookie card. But great set to be purchasing.
The other side.
Yeah, absolutely. So Halliburton obviously had the big shot on Thursday, game 1 of the NBA Finals. So that's one. He has like one dagger shot a
Per
round
series,
now
yeah.
at this point. Yeah. So just truly a clutch player. This is another super interesting card, just given that it's a pop 5 and it is transacted, 15 times it seems, haven't counted, but a handful of times here. So definitely transacting pretty often. Didn't see a massive bump from the last sales in 2024 necessarily, but I mean, definitely a good sale nonetheless. I think this is just more one of those rare cards. I don't think this is by any means an outstanding sale, but it's also not, anything to
Yeah.
scoff at. I think it's just a good buy overall.
Yeah, I think this was just more pulled for us to show the trend for Halliburton. Yeah, even more than SGA. And obviously it's kind of more parabolic, right? It was flatlined for a long time and it just really took off. They didn't expect him to do anything. Most people didn't expect him to do anything this playoffs, and him coming out and kind of leading this Pacer team to the finals has been crazy to watch. But yeah, this was the only Halliburton in the alt auction, so we just wanted to touch on his cards in general, which are going crazy.
Yeah, and he also, I mean, he did this last year too, right? Like he's definitely kind of cementing himself as like a playoff riser. Maybe not the most flashy or MVP type caliber player in the regular season, but he's definitely shown up for these big games. He carried them to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, so
Yep,
pretty
clutch
impressive
gene.
stuff.
Yep, he's got it.
Absolutely.
Oh God, Bryce Young.
Cool. Bryce Young. So, I actually don't necessarily hate Bryce Young. I know, I mean, he's trending up quite a bit as well, 15% over the last 3 months. I think a lot of people are very intrigued the way he ended his season. Just looking at some of his stats, he was able to beat the Falcons the last week of the season. He had 250 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. The team put up 44 points. Week before that, him and his team also put up 36 points in a win over the Cardinals. So again, I think people are pretty optimistic in the direction that this team's going. They also picked up a wide receiver in the first round for him, which was one of the higher rated wide receivers in the draft. So I don't think this team is necessarily doing anything to put Bryce Young in a bad position. We'll just see if the talent, continues to develop on the field. So I think this is an interesting buy nonetheless. Didn't really lose anything from last season, so it's not like he necessarily bought into too much hype, but he still has a lot to prove in his very young and early NFL career.
Yeah, PSA must love seeing this card pop 4, and it's obviously numbered to 5. So
Yeah, that is
they
pretty
are
crazy.
pretty generous when it comes to gold vinyls, it seems. So keep that in mind. All right, we got some Kobe sales. I have a couple Kobe sales to cover. His stuff, obviously timeless, and it just seems to keep breaking records and keep getting more expensive, especially for his autograph stuff and especially for the on-card stuff. So we have a 2008 Exquisite Collection autograph, numbered to 24 in a BGS 9.5 Auto 10. And this, I believe, was an all-time high sale. Yep, coming in at just over $8,000. So super sweet card, obviously exquisite, one of the more sought after sets, and on card Kobe auto, you can't beat that. 2003 SP Authentic Kobe, another BGS 9.5 Auto 10, another on card auto, of course. This one's coming in at just over $4,800. That is another all-time high for this grade. And just a cool card altogether. I mean, these are horizontals, so they're not as sought after as the verticals, but still, fetching almost $5,000 for a 9.5 is just insane. And obviously a little more early in his career, so cool to see there. Last for the Kobe's, we have a more recent 2018. Was this the year he retired? I don't remember what year he actually retired. Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I do not off the top of my head. I know this is obviously a case hit, so just speaking towards the rarity of this card, I'm sure or that definitely is
Yeah.
giving this card a massive bump. But let
Yeah, I
me
mean,
let me fact check that here
yeah,
quick.
no problem. Yeah, so you can see even almost 11% in the last 90 days, it's up. And looking at the sales for this card, yet another all-time high for the Kobe Bryant 2018, and this was the Prism Choice Tiger Stripe. Just a cool card, cool design. 2018 was a pretty nice year for Prism. Really liked the design of these cards that year. So yeah, $4,000 non-auto, kind of crazy. And then another GOAT, obviously LeBron, one of the greatest players of all time. We have one sale to cover, kind of just showing how strong his market is as well. It's kind of all over the place, but overall, LeBron's market is pretty expensive. So we have a 9.5 Auto 10 2010 SP Authentic Sign of the Times. And this is coming in at over $3,600 as a Pop 9. Obviously shattering some of those other early sales even during the peak at 2,800, the recent high. So cool to see LeBron kind of getting some love as well. Obviously his season's over, but he's at least got one more year in him. I believe that'll be year 22. So I would imagine that a lot of this LeBron stuff will start to skyrocket the second he really announces that he's done. And that could be in a year's time. So I would imagine people are, if they weren't already, starting to load up on some more LeBron stuff, especially autographs, which are hard to come by.
Yeah, yeah. The autographs, I know he is under Upper Deck, I believe. So,
Yep,
not signing anything that is licensed, which is, just adding rarity to any older stuff. We've
yep,
looked at some of the, 2003, 2004, 05, things like that. But cards like this are just always going to have that value because, just naturally he's not signing anything anymore. So to
yep.
put it on the card and to just get your hands on a LeBron autograph is tough to come by.
Yeah, the cool thing about this piece too is it's actually his high school. So, you got the St. Vincent, St. Mary forward there. So you can kind of see that it's got his high school logo there as well. So it's cool that they manufactured this card in 2010 and kind of paid homage to the early days of LeBron. And then this is kind of on the other side of the spectrum for LeBron. I'll let you cover this one.
Yeah, I mean, again, Ultimate Collect or
Yeah, Ultimate
Ultimate
Collections.
is a Upper Deck product. So, going back to the Upper Deck days. I mean, yeah, kind of a brutal sale here for the seller. I believe Nick, you had mentioned that this was actually the same card that had
Yep.
sold a few weeks back. So, definitely took a bath on this one. Just, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
brutal sale for a goat. You
Yep.
kind of hate to see that.
I mean, yeah, it's Pop 2. And this was the same serial number back in April at Fanatics, and it's just, it kind of makes you think, what is the buyer of the Fanatics and then the seller here at Alt thinking? Timing wise, you're picking it up when LeBron's still obviously in the playoffs or end of the regular season. Or he might not have been at that point, but close to, and then you're flipping super quick publicly both times. It just seemed like not great, right? You're doing it when there's a clear comp of your sales, so people aren't going to want to pay over that. So um, just kind of a doom bad play on his part, so we had to cover that.
Another thing that could have affected this is just the auto being so faded, starting
Yeah,
to
that's a
fade. I
good point.
mean, that's definitely looked at within these high end cards.
Yep,
Is the strength of the auto. So I'm sure that played a big role in the.
yep. And it does have an auto, it says auto 8 grade. I don't see it on the card necessarily on the slab, but it does say it's an auto 8. So that's a very generous 8 in my opinion with how faded and smeared this is, but it might have been graded a while back. This one's a cool one. I'll cover this one quick. This is 2004 Topps Chrome, just iconic set, and this is the Gold X Factor of Eli Manning, PSA 10 Pop 3. So there's 279. It's numbered to 279, and it's a Pop 3 as a PSA 10. There's no BGS 95s or BGS 10s, so this is an extremely hard card to grade, and we've only seen two transactions of this publicly. 2018 for $500, and then last week at Alt for just over $4,000. So super sweet card. Obviously he's retired now, so we're probably not seeing a lot of movement. We don't have the player chart here for Eli, but we're not seeing a lot of movement, I'd guess, on his cards. But this is one of those ones that you see come up, and you never know if you're going to see one again. So cool card. Obviously big bump from the last sale, but super hard to come by.
I'm also curious where all those cards went because I mean, yeah, like you were saying, to 279, there's
Yeah.
only 90 graded, and you can assume some people tried to cross, potentially
Yep.
BGSs to PSA or vice versa. So, you know, I'm sure there's
Yeah.
so many still in the box. That's crazy.
Yeah, that is true. I'll let you cover this one as well.
Yeah, Giannis Antetokounmpo. This card it transacts pretty often actually for it being a pop 87, which is really low compared to the silver PSAs you would see in today's market. However, nothing too notable about this sale. I think just in terms of prospecting a potential trade upcoming this offseason and kind of assuming he's most likely going to go to a contender ready to win now. Definitely has some upside on this purchase. So nothing too notable about the sale itself, but important to note that Giannis could definitely be on the move this summer.
Is it pretty much confirmed he's out of Milwaukee?
I don't think he has necessarily came out publicly and said that. I think it's heavily speculated across the league,
Yep.
and I'm sure they are more than willing to take phone calls on him.
Right. So yeah, it could be, we see this little bump here for Giannis, only 4% almost, but yeah, I would guess right around here is when, those rumors started coming out that Giannis is done with Milwaukee. So we'll see if that comes true, and it, will probably have the effect, it, depending on where he goes, might give him a little bump. And this one, Anthony Richardson, just coming, I think, into training camp, he injured the same shoulder that he hurt last year again. So I believe he's sidelined through OTAs and maybe the rest of training camp. I'm not sure how long that injury will last. I think they're still kind of doing some testing on that and things like that. But this is just bad timing for Anthony Richardson if there was anything left for him in the hobby. Um, Obviously, getting injured last year kind of tanked his cards, and if he ends up missing time this year, he might, be on the brink of replacement. And we can see that trend with his cards here. Just looking at this BGS 9.5 of his Select Gold XRC, transacted at 7,500 right before the season last year, and now transacting at 2,500. So, 33% of what it did just 1 year ago is kind of crazy to see, and down 8% in 90 days.
Yeah, and this being a pop one, obviously the original buyer definitely got demolished on this last sale, but that was always kind of his story coming into the league too. It's like he was always a boomer bust guy. No one really knew what they had. He didn't play very many games in college, so doesn't necessarily surprise me to see that he potentially could be struggling not only with the injuries but just on
Yeah,
the field performances as well. So it's kind of like that going back to prospecting baseball.
yeah,
It's like he was a true wild card. He could have this could have been a $25,000 card. You
yeah,
didn't
definitely.
really know what you had coming into the season
It's hard
or
when you
into
got a
his career.
guy with his play style that just wants to run the ball and lower his shoulder and was used to doing that in college. You're running
Yep.
into bigger, stronger guys in the NFL now. You're not going to be able to do that every week, and I think he learned that last year with his injury. So I'm sure it's just a fluke training camp injury. Hopefully, it's not long lasting, and maybe he can come out and prove everyone wrong. All the people that are, not bidding on his cards, especially, and kind of jump back into the hobby as one of those top QBs. Little wide receiver love, Jamar Chase. What do you got for him?
Yeah, I think Jamar Chase is just 1A, 1B with Justin Jefferson. I'd love to see how a Justin Jefferson card of the Snakeskin Prism is transacting as well. Super electric, can score a touchdown anytime he touches the football. Also just a character on the field, off the field. Just, I don't know. I mean, nothing too
Yeah.
crazy here at
Yep.
the sale, but just a great buy, and it's great to see that wide receivers are getting the love like you mentioned.
Yeah. I think, maybe 2, 3 years ago, maybe 3, 4 years ago, QBs were just the main topic in the hobby, right? At least the cards
Mhm.
that were transacting at thousands of dollars all the time. And now we're starting to see, guys like you said, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and even some of the new guys like Midweek Neighbors just getting tons of hobby
Yeah.
love. And yeah, we can see here. I mean, Jamar Chase was a great football player in 2023, and his stuff was $587, and to 4x 2 years later, not even year and a half later, it's really showing you that wide receivers are really starting to gain traction, and I think that's cool because it's the normal hobby man is getting priced out of the quarterbacks. So to be able to collect and maybe flip some wide receivers at a cheaper price point, and still get up to that couple $1,000 range is definitely an opportunity for people in the hobby.
Yeah, I think another thing too that has recently changed in just the NFL over the last few years is that a wide receiver can elevate a quarterback. It was always kind of the perspective of like, hey, the quarterback needs to drive everything for a wide receiver, but you look at guys like again obviously Jamar Chase has Burrow. That doesn't really relate to him, but Justin Jefferson, right? You can definitely assume he elevated Sam Darnold last
Oh yeah.
season. Malik Neighbors is elevating whatever quarterback is throwing him the ball. So, yeah, like you said, it's great to see that these wide receivers can have some
Yeah,
equity in the game.
I think it makes sense. I mean, these guys are making just as much of an impact on the field as the quarterbacks, and arguably flashier plays when the quarterback might not throw the best ball, they're going up and getting it regardless. So super cool to see this. Case hits, Dalton Connect, manga. This is what he's a rookie in 24. Case hit, obviously, coming out of Prism. We tried to find some similar sales. What did you find on those? You mostly just found like Curry's, right, and stuff like that around the same
Yeah,
price range.
there was one interesting one that had sold a few weeks back on Alt. It was Xavier Worthy. I kind of would bucket him as the same type of player potentially as Dalton Connect.
Yeah,
That one was a PSA 10. It had sold for 1,600. So you kind of look at like these guys that aren't necessarily like the best player, or in Worthy's case, the best wide receiver on his team, but still pulling a massive premium for the case hit factor. So that was kind of the
yep,
idea behind highlighting this card, is just showing the value in which these case hits have and the true rarity that they
yeah.
offer.
Yeah, this is yeah, it goes back to almost prospecting, right? This is a bench player we're talking about here, and obviously a case hit PSA 10 over $2,000. I mean, personally, if I have $2,000, I don't think I'm spending it on a bench player in the NBA. But who knows if he becomes an SGA-esque player? You know, this is a $10,000 plus card then at that point. So, just kind of wanted to highlight this as to show that case hits are drawing the ultra premium in the hobby, and the manga is definitely one of them.
Yeah, maybe with Dalton Connect, he'll be one of those trade chips that the Lakers look to bring someone else in, like they tried to deal him at
Yeah.
the deadline this last year. So maybe he'll get an opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, the failed trade of Connect. That was definitely interesting.
That's brutal.
And then yeah, this one super cool, and I think personally super undervalued. This was the inception, the first set of Kaboom. So 2013 Panini Innovation is where this Kaboom stuff came from. So to get a guy like Anthony Davis, just traded to the Mavs last year, obviously. Um, in a PSA 9 first Kaboom, only $700. It seems criminally cheap. Pop 32, only 11 higher. Looking at the sales, obviously it's like a 300, $400 or $500 card last year, and it really did jump up. But it still seems cheap to me with the inaugural set. I think that's just pretty iconic when you're gonna, look back in maybe 10 years and go, where did Kaboom get created? Because it's such a staple in the hobby now. That I think, yeah, this is a really, really cool set, and I think it's really, really, really cheap for what it should be if we're comparing it to, a manga connect, right? So, you know what you got with Anthony Davis here. So just a cool sale we wanted to cover quick. And then we're going to cap it off with a little bit of hockey. Us Minnesota guys like to talk hockey, and especially Rhett, so I'll let him cover these last two.
Yeah, so Bedard is an interesting case. I think he came into the NHL with an unbelievable amount of hype. He was talked about for half a decade for his
Yeah.
draft day, and I don't think he has necessarily like been a bust by any means, but he definitely hasn't lived up to like that Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid first overall hype. You look at some of those guys, they're putting up, McDavid got hurt his rookie year, but Crosby first and second year he's putting up 100 points. McDavid second year he's the captain of his team and putting up over 100 points. So definitely hasn't lived up to the hype he necessarily had. But nonetheless, I think where this card is super interesting. Definitely a higher dollar point than his true young gun, but just again we talked about like the case hit and the rarity here. This is a pop 108 compared to his true base young guns like a pop 10,000. So super interesting card here. The last sale on eBay wasn't too crazy compared to this one. But going back a little bit, there's a few $3,000+ sales. So I think in terms of prospecting Bedard, I think the team needs to do him justice and putting some players around him. I think they'll definitely make a stride towards that this offseason. But I think next off season will really be the big splash that they may go pick someone up through trade or in free agency where they really look to cement him as a top 5, top 10 type player in the league. So interesting card nonetheless. I do like that. The pop count is much lower here versus his base young gun. So I'd rather pick this up than 3 or 4 of his true young guns.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on this card.
And then you mentioned
And
Ovi.
then, oh
Here he
yeah,
is.
Ovi. Super interesting card here. Ovechkin had so much hype leading up to his surpassing of Gretzky in the all-time goal leading category. I think it definitely inflated a little higher than
Yep.
you're kind of starting to see, the hype die down there. He's going to enter what they're saying is most likely the last year of his career. With that said, he has his Stanley Cup. He has, multiple, Rocket Richard trophies
Yep.
where he's leading the league in scoring. He's all-time leading goal scorer in the NHL. Also super intrigued by the pop count on here, so I don't think this is a bad buy by any means. Actually, I guess most recently it sold on eBay for a little bit cheaper, but
Oh yeah.
nonetheless, I think OV is fairly safe, but super interesting to see that his cards are downtrending
Yeah.
after how much of a spike he saw this last year.
I think, like you were saying, he passed Gretzky with that was regular season goals. He has an
Yep.
opportunity this coming year to pass him in just playoff and regular season goals. I think he's less than 50 away from breaking that record, so it kind of makes me wonder if he has a, 30, 40 goal season and a couple rounds in the playoffs if he ends up, breaking that record again if we see the same kind of effect paired with the retirement to kind of, give one more boost, end of career boost for Ovechkin before it just ends up being a steady rise over his retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is just like his longevity too. You think about how many generations of hockey fans watched Ovechkin. Um, you know, Obviously, like my whole conscious life, I've known Alex Ovechkin in the
Yeah.
league. So, super, intriguing type player for me. It means more than just what he's done, breaking the NHL record, winning one Stanley Cup. It's like you see him on ESPN every night growing up, things like that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
many generations with how long he's played in the league at such a high level. This card has an opportunity to reach a lot of hearts after he
Yeah,
retires.
100%. So such an iconic set with that 2005 upper deck. So really cool to see. And that was the last card we wanted to cover here. So that'll conclude it for another alt auction recap. We will be back next Thursday to cover the end of the next auction.